Hey, battle buddies and healthy heroes. We are here today with my friend Will. Will is going to be a featured fighter. We're going to do an interview, and he's going to tell me all about his LARP life and his LARP combat skills. So first off, why don't you just do a little introduction of yourself? Tell us about yourself as a LARPer, like when you started. Who are you?
My name's Will Kinkaid. I've been a LARPer mostly during the Alliance LARP rule set for just over 20 years now. Staff position currently, I am part of the Alliance Rules Committee.
The national staff.
The national
For
staff,
ARC, yeah.
I've previously been on at least 3 chapters, either logistics and props, and possibly rules, most likely rules on a bunch of them, yeah.
That's a lot of solid experience. So you definitely know your way around the technicalities of the game, and you're very well versed in the mechanics of it. That's awesome. So more specifically about Boffer combat, what about the LARP battlefield or the act of combat with Boffers, what about that appeals to you?
It's very high energy and a lot of chances to use strategy, and teamwork especially is one of my favorite things about it. Because the one-on-ones are always fun, but 6 on 10 or 6 on 6 is much more my speed.
So, in regards to performing on a battlefield, have you ever struggled with anything, or like what's a greatest weakness as a fighter, or issues that you've run into as you try to grow your LARP combat skills?
I'm not sure I have a greatest weakness. I try to shore up any holes in my armor or whatnot. I have been told that I'm a very fast learner and able to react. Never make the same mistake twice, effectively.
Gotcha. Honestly, that's a really important part of LARPing, is the mental game. I mean, a lot of times in my blog I'll talk about the mental health side of exercise, but the mental game of combat, like knowing where your weaknesses might be, or even seeing where you're hit once and then making that adjustment to not be hit again, that's a commendable skill.
Yeah, and or using your opponent's attacks like against them, and or seeing they fall into a pattern that then you're able to counterattack.
Yeah, the strategy mental, like when you're sparring with someone, tracking what they're doing and figuring out their patterns, you would say a strong suit of yours is the learning. And because learning is a strong suit, it sort of covers the weaknesses, probably?
I believe so, and also having 20 years of experience, you can see a lot of people who aren't as comfortable, we call it telegraphing.
Yeah, sure.
Like you know where they're going for, so you're already prepared for it.
Sure. So experience and mental prep sort of covers your weakness because you can see things coming, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
With your experience, you have a good grasp of all sorts of different weapon styles, so you can demonstrate the less common ones and really throw people for a loop. Because if you're fighting with like a two-hander and your opponent doesn't know how to approach a two-hander, that's a big benefit.
That was one of the big things of picking up a two-hander and expanding my skill set, was because every little part from each, you can like use that in every other style.
Yeah.
Like the footwork is different, but also it has similarities of that, how important it is, and in making sure your space, your
range control,
your attack space.
Yeah.
You know where that is for every weapon you do.
Well, so are you, this is news to me. Are you telling me that you sort of feel like two-hander is a good place to start because it has those foundational demands that can translate into other weapon skills?
I feel that sword and board is probably where a person can start, because you can be more lazy, and the shield is way more forgiving of mistakes than any other style is.
Okay.
I would say that if you're looking for a challenge, go to two-hander, because if you can use a two-hander and be in a formation, and that's fine, and that's not super skill testing. But if you want to be a one-on-one fighter with a two-hander, you need to seriously like practice and go into one-on-one, because no one's going to give you the space that you want. And since we're in a LARP, soft as head LARP, and face shots that's normally how you would keep someone away from you, is you point at their face and they would stay away from you.
But that's not so safe in Alliance.
Much, yeah, so.
Wow, okay, so maybe what you're saying is like the two-hander is kind of like the next level of when you understand what the basics are and you want to refine them even more, like the footwork and the range control and those things. You have found that two-hander has kind of upped your game overall because of
You
refining
need to
those
be
skills?
hyper aware of your range and everyone else's range.
Your range and your spacing and
Yeah.
footwork. Neat. Maybe I should pick up a two-hander. I don't know. That's a cool tidbit.
A lot of people don't because traditionally two-handers are literally heavier than all the rest of the weapons.
Yeah.
But the way I make mine, they're super light, is lighter than a lot of longswords. So yeah.
Now might be an appropriate time to plug. This dude has a Boffer making craft establishment situation, right? Will Kinkaid Nerdcrafts on
Yeah, just
Facebook?
Kinkaid Nerdcrafts with a K.
Yeah, Kinkaid Crafts with a K?
Yeah.
Kinkaid
Well,
Nerdcrafts.
Yeah, just a Facebook page. Yeah.
Yeah, he made my Gorb Cheetahkin. He made her newest claws, and they are very light, and they have neat hand protectors, and I love them. So
I
maybe
have about
maybe
15
we'll fight
years
with them.
of rep making experience. So yeah.
Nice. So that's really cool. The different things that can get you interested in LARP. Like, we're here to talk about combat and battlefield stuff, but like the crafting and behind the scenes, and like you mentioned early on, your experience being like rules and mechanic based. There's a lot to dig into in a lifestyle as a LARPer.
Yeah, especially with the reps, I try to make mine lean more towards the mechanics. You know, back weighted, lighter, and able, and also go with the aesthetics and not just make it a log with spikes sticking out the side, stuff like that.
Yeah. That's really cool. I love those details. So the next thing I want to ask about is, what would you say has brought you the most success on a LARP battlefield? Like, do you have any signature style, or what has been most useful for you in combat?
So myself and my team for a long time, we were a squad full of rogues. So having 4 or 5 people all surrounding the lone NPC or even a group of NPCs
That's scary.
would take them down in short order. So cooperation, teamwork, everyone being on the same mind frame.
Like the mindset?
Mindset, yeah.
Or like the perspective or the approach, even. Like your approach to combat and your approach to strategy is shared amongst your team.
Yeah.
That's another, like, dude, I'm here to talk about athleticism, and you're like, but let's talk about crafting and mechanics and community and teamwork. There's just so much more right below the surface of the sport of LARP.
Yeah, if you wanted to be a duelist, there's other fencing and there's other things out there, but like the teamwork aspect of the game is the game. Like, otherwise, you're just playing a video game by yourself. Like, it's fun, but it's a lot more fun when everyone else joins in.
Oh, wow. That is a beautiful perspective. I feel like I can offer slight contrary information because my second character was a huge loner, like my cheetah, who I play a lot. Definitely started out as a huge loner. But if I remember correctly, there's actually a funny story, a fun fact of a Will and Susie story. We were at a Gettysburg event together, and it was like my first time, maybe second time, really getting comfortable with her. And you looked at me and you were like, do you even remember this? You like gave me positioning tips. You were like, okay, move. You have to go around them. And like, it was my first experience like, oh, this is how you surround an NPC.
And I know for a while the hunt, since we were mostly not all high level, but all experienced and or staffers sometimes, so we would also try to take any new PC who wanted to be part of a team. We'd take them under our wing and show them the ropes so they would survive. And even go so far as like lend them our extra magic items and stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember like Jeebus has sold Nakujo some stuff. So even if you have a loner character like who Nakujo is, she's just very grumpy and rude and judgmental to everyone, there are still nice people in the LARP community that will find ways to work with you, to tell your story, to encourage your development.
If that's how you want to play the character, then play the character that. But if you feel like you're being forced to play the character that way because of people being
like you're isolated or don't feel good,
just mean or whatever, or just cliquey, like we tried to make sure that everyone could, if they wanted to, like we would go to some people and then they would be like, oh no, we don't need your help. And I'm like, oh, okay, if you don't, that's you. Like, we're willing to give you we would even give like fair shares of loot for the weekend. Like, if this is what you want to do, just come sweep for us. Search bodies and stuff like that.
Like a role on your team would be a sweeper, like somebody who.
That's what I started out when Jeebus joined the hunt. I was the sweeper because I was barehanded and.
Yeah, and you were fast and you ran and grabbed all the treasure.
Yeah.
Oh, neat. So a strength of the battlefield in your experience is that camaraderie, the strategy, the teamwork, being on the same page, even having defined roles within your team as to how you approach stuff and how you go about your day and how you tell your story in LARP.
The more people you interact with is exponentially more fun.
Wow.
then yeah, so.
That's great. That's awesome. I also feel like giving a shout out to your wife, because at that same Gettysburg event, Aisling, it was through my character Nikujo meeting Jeebus and Aisling and learning that they were from Laerthan that brought me to a whole, like, I started chapter hopping more because meeting your characters introduced me to different campaigns in different worlds, which is another awesome selling point for Alliance, is that you can play the same character at all the different chapters.
Places, yeah.
Yeah, and so the relationships you build and the friends you meet in one world, and you like save that world together and you learn stuff, and then you explore another world and you train more together and you save a different world, and it's just continuous story and continuous growth, which is what I'm all about.
And it never gets stale, since each place has its own little flair or flavor to it as well.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Very cool. Very awesome. I agree with a lot of those strong points of LARP for sure. Next question is, what fitness or athletic skill do you think is most valuable in preparing for LARP combat?
Yeah, increasing cardio.
Yeah.
Like being able to just be out there. Sometimes we're not in the best weather conditions. Sometimes we have hills. A lot of our sites have hills. So being able to go down a hill, up the next side of the hill, and then do a fight, and then takes a bit of
lung action there.
Yeah, like cardio and leg strength.
Yeah.
Because our weapons aren't super heavy, so we don't really need excessive arm strength.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you want to wear heavier armor, you're going to need shoulders, and even then you want the legs to support if you're wearing heavy chainmail, stuff like that.
Sure. I find that pretty agreeable, because it is unique. Like, not only are you running around and doing the athletic feats, but you are also doing the mental game of the battle, like we mentioned, and then the, like, physically calling out your stats and your calls and all of that stuff just takes extra coordination and lung support and all of that. So, cardio for LARP. Are you ready for rapid fire advice round?
Maybe.
We'll see. I have, 4 more questions that I'm just going to rapid fire ask you and give me like a short answer.
Okay.
Let's try it.
Sure.
So, 1, what's the most important skill for combat success?
Having a clear voice.
A clear voice. There. Cool. Good.
Being able to get your point or calls.
Like both for the mechanics of what you're swinging and for the communication with your team about like when you're calling.
Ideally more like I threw this, you know what happens, and then we don't have to worry about clarifying.
Gotcha. Sure. So clarity in mechanics and clarity in voice. Neat. What's the most important tip for newbies? New to LARP, new to combat.
New to LARP is find people to hang out with.
Yeah.
Know the local food chain.
Oh, yeah?
Like know the pecking order, so you're not, talking smack on the person who's in charge, and then...
Oh, yikes.
Yeah.
Like in-game hierarchy nobility sort of stuff, or
no.
even like out-of-game like staff?
I mean, out-of-game it shouldn't matter, because everyone should be adults, and if you talk smack to someone's, their character, they shouldn't take it personally. But you don't want to go up and, talk smack or steal from a knight or something like that, then that...
Gotcha. And that, that's that's a nuance worth mentioning. In the world of LARP, you can have characters who are morally gray, or like you can be kind of like a thief, or kind of like a punk who like talks smack on all sorts of people.
If you're going to be a thief, you need to know the rules before you start stealing stuff.
Yeah, so maybe advice for newbies is if you want to explore those gray areas, have some out-of-game understanding of like what nobility is, what consequences are.
I mean, new players, like if you're new to LARP, like go NPC first.
Sure. So you can get a feel of the flow of the game.
You can pick what you want to try, and you can. If you get in trouble for stealing, you're an NPC. It doesn't affect. Doesn't go on your permanent record.
Yeah, right. It's not like the story of your character.
Right.
You're like, oh, this is how this works now. I get it.
Yeah.
Good. That's a solid tip for newbies is NPCing. Rapid fire number 3. What's the most important secret for sustained enjoyment, or like how do you love this hobby your whole life? How and why?
Why? Because of all the awesome plot teams that are out there, that the stories just keep changing and hitting you from different angles. And I mean, the combat almost never gets stale. Even if you know what you're doing, it almost increases your knowledge, because you don't really have to worry about, am I going to get hit? You know what you're doing.
Like once you're confident, it's still exciting because you're like less in your head and more fluid.
Then you're more on getting the strategies right, like making sure my team works and hits in the right spots.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really solid point. Like your evolution as a LARP combatant goes from like worrying about your own defenses to being fluid in your own fighting to be coordinating a whole team on a battlefield. Sort of, there's like a progression you can take.
Yeah.
And that's been your experience, you think?
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, these are like semi-rapid fire. We're getting a little excited about them, but technically rapid fire number 4, last one. Anything else, or what's the most salient point you think that our battle buddies and healthy heroes should know?
Like, temper your expectations. Like, don't expect to show up at an event and be the world-saving hero. Like, you can do that, but make sure your expectations mesh with what you personally can do and or what the game system supports.
Yeah, honestly, that's great insight. I didn't see that one coming, but it does track with what you've told me about like team involvement and staff involvement, like understanding your role and your community and what you can contribute and what you can get from them in return, like having an open mind to those sorts of expectations.
A lot of stuff like that is in like the player's guide and stuff like that, about knowing, don't write that you're the best bard or whatever if you can't sing for real.
Oh,
like,
sure.
Stuff like that.
That's another unique point about LARP, is that like the Alliance catchphrase is be everything you can't be. So we do encourage people to, have these fantastical skills and ideas, but it's also, LARP is different than just a video game because you do put on the costume and use your body to make it happen.
Right. There's no like persuasion skill. Like if you need to,
can't roll for it.
If you need to talk someone out of something, you need to talk that person out of that and role play with them. You can't just roll the dice or my stats higher than your stats.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the beauty of roleplay. Part of the beauty of an immersive world that you're physically putting yourself in. So
don't ever forget to role play. Like even fighting, you're role playing. Like make sure you're also role playing, taking your hits and talk. You can even have some banter with your whoever you're fighting.
Smack talk.
Of course, yeah.
Oh, juicy, beautiful. That is good, solid advice. I would now like to formally challenge you, good sir. Would you like to fight me?
Yes.
Yes. I'll see you on the battlefield.